This is Transfer Talk. We're 16 days into the window and it looks like the majority of the transfer activity could happen in the next few weeks. But who needs to do what? Kalvin Phillips is a man in demand. He's wanted by 4 Premier League clubs and a European giant. But will he move? Ajax are prepared to break the bank to sign Jordan Henderson, but will wages still prove to be a stumbling block? And we're live to Brazil this hour as Brighton go in search of yet another South American footballer. We'll tell you who Roberto De Zerbi might be after shortly. Good afternoon to you and to James Savundra, Nabeed Haroon and Ellen Ellard. We're going to start the show with today's big news from Serie A because Jose Mourinho has been sacked as Roma boss. OK, we're going to get more on this throughout the afternoon, sorry. But first of all, James, just tell us how it's come about.
Yeah, this morning, Jose Mourinho was summoned to the Roma training ground for talks with the club's owners. And Sky Italy understand it's not a sudden decision that they made. It's a decision they made over the course of events and results so far this season and the last month in particular. Now, they've lost 4 of the last 7 games in Serie A, currently 9th in Serie A, and as you can see, they're 5 points off Champions League qualification. It was a loss against Lazio in the Coppa Italia, their city rivals, that was particularly painful. Jose Mourinho's been booed at matches, he's been sent off on a number of occasions in recent weeks as well. It felt like it was untenable, and the club's owners decided at this point in time it was time to search and look in a new direction. So Jose Mourinho sat by Roma early on this morning. Yeah, and you see there his record in all competitions since he took that Roma job with a win rate of 48%. Let's get more on this now and speak to our reporter Gary Cottrell, he's at Crystal Palace ahead of speaking to Roy Hodgson. But Gary, it's a story that you are fully aware of. You've got a great relationship with Jose Mourinho. Was he expecting this outcome?
Listen, I don't think anything takes anyone by surprise at the top of football, and given Jose Mourinho's career, nothing takes him by surprise. Of course, he was sacked by Spurs a few days before playing in a cup final, which he'd taken them to. I haven't managed to speak to Jose today. Obviously, it's been a busy day. It's been a disappointing day. He's waiting for the dust to settle before I'm sure he gets in contact with people. But I did manage to speak to him a couple of days ago, and I put it to him that yet again this transfer window, the Friedkin family who run Roma were giving him zero backing, and he agreed. Obviously, FFP problems at Roma, and if you just take, for example, the last transfer window, the summer transfer window, and the couple of transfer windows before that were the same, much more money coming into the club than being spent by the club. I'll just quickly run you through the figures from last summer. Romelu Lukaku came in, a loan fee was paid for him, by the way. Jose Mourinho was central to bringing Lukaku to the club. He talked him into it. He persuaded Lukaku to take a massive pay cut so that Roma could afford his wages. So it'll be interesting to see what Lukaku's future is at Roma without Mourinho there. They paid for Paredes from PSG a small amount, about 5 million or so, and a 1 million loan fee for Sanchez, who's been almost constantly injured since. So 9.5 million euros spent, 70 million euros came in last summer. Ibanez to Saudi Arabia, and of course Kluivert to Bournemouth, the Zaniolo money as well. And those injuries that I talked to you about. Chris Smalling not played a minute all season. Tammy Abraham not played a minute all season. Dybala, their only probably world-class player, out more than he's in through injury. The fans were still behind Mourinho. The last 44 home matches at the Stadio Olimpico have been sellouts. That was unheard of in Roma history before he arrived, and they were 4th. Let's not forget they were in the Champions League places earlier last month. So it's not ideal to lose in a derby to Lazio. The results of late, of course, haven't been great. So if you ask whether he's surprised, he probably isn't, but I think he'll see his time at Roma is certainly not a failure. And his contract was up anyway in the summer, and he wasn't planning to renew.
Right, we'll go back to Gary in just a moment, but it's going to be Daniele De Rossi who replaces Mourinho as the head coach at Roma. Why De Rossi, Nabeed?
In all fairness, I'm not 100% sure because he's only managed once. He's only managed for 17 games. He struggled at Spal. He had a very bad time there, 17.3% win rate. Obviously, Spal are not on Roma's size and maybe with a more expansive squad and more availability to him in terms of quality of player, he may be able to do better. But I think, for me, it's probably the feeling around the club. Like James said there, he was booed off in his last game, but Mourinho is, let's say, a problematic figure at times, and he's certainly had his troubles on the touchline this season. And so I think you bring in Daniele De Rossi, played for 18 years for the club. The feeling should change. He's a hero, he's a legend of the game over there. And with that feeling, they'll hope they can sort of crawl their way back into the Champions League spots. Because Serie A has been a little bit inconsistent this season, apart from really Inter Milan right at the top. So there's every chance they can sneak back into the Champions League places.
Well, we'll go back to Gary now, because, Gary, everyone's asking what is next for Jose Mourinho. And, of course, is there a chance we could see him one last time, maybe, in the Premier League?
Well, he's certainly box office, isn't he? Wherever he goes, it would be great. I guess lots of people would say to see him back in the Premier League, and I don't think he'll be short of options. He obviously turned down Portugal in the summer. He obviously turned down a big money move to Saudi Arabia in the summer. He was always been linked with the return to Real Madrid. Him and Perez remain close, but Carlo Ancelotti is now staying at Real Madrid. It seems it frees up the Brazil job, which Carlo Ancelotti was being linked with, so maybe potentially Jose Mourinho would be interested in the Brazil job. We're here at Crystal Palace. We know that Roy Hodgson is leaving in the summer. Whatever happens, will they go for Gareth Southgate with his history here at Crystal Palace? Would that free up the England job? I've heard his name mentioned in a couple of phone-in programmes, Jose Mourinho linking him, and fans saying it'd be great to do the England job. And of course, Newcastle, you can't go far without hearing Jose Mourinho's name linked with Newcastle. He calls himself the Little Magpie. Of course, those links, his love for Sir Bobby Robson, Mr. Robson, as he still calls him. Eddie Howe, of course, still extremely popular at Newcastle, out of Europe, 10th in the league, injury problems, of course. The fans wouldn't, I don't think, take kindly to Eddie Howe being removed from that position if the board decided to act, but one manager they might accept in his place would be Jose Mourinho because of those Bobby Robson links. And of course, in the summer, when Chelsea were looking for a new manager, I was of the understanding that Jose Mourinho certainly wouldn't turn down a chance to return to Chelsea for a third time, although it looks like the ownership has gone a different direction with Chelsea these days.
So, Ellen, the possibility of returning to the Premier League, how happy would you be to see him back?
Gary said that, box office, isn't he? What a character. I'd love to see him back, the special one.
Little magpie.
Little magpie, little magpie. What an incredible trophy cabinet he has. Obviously, not the end to his time at Roma that him or the club would have wanted, but that doesn't take anything away from what he's done over the years. Just think of the press conferences. I'd love to see him back.
Right, OK. Well, Gary, we mentioned that you're there to speak to Roy Hodgson at Crystal Palace today. No signings yet, but we understand that Kalvin Phillips is on the radar.
Well, yes, I'm sure there's lots of interest in Kalvin Phillips. Again, the aforementioned Newcastle are also linked with him, but I think the fact that Manchester City wants a loan fee, quite a big loan fee, and a commitment to buy, or certainly an obligation to buy. That's my understanding that the number of clubs interested has dwindled. But Crystal Palace, it seems, are interested. Kouré seems to be out for the rest of the season. He could come in as a replacement for him. And obviously the chance for Roy Hodgson to work with a young English player would be something that the player might be interested as well, at least for the time being.
Gary, thanks very much. Great to speak to you. Just one more on Jose Mourinho. When we talk about him come back to the Premier League, you've been looking at some of his stats from last time, James.
Yeah, Jose Mourinho, there'll always be interest in trying to have him as your manager. He spoke about Portugal wanting him to be their next head coach before they appointed Roberto Martinez. Said he got a crazy offer from the Saudi Pro League in the summer as well. But we can see his record in the Premier League and how his impact has diminished since he joined Chelsea in 2004. Had so much success there, winning the Premier League.
That is actually incredible.
It's remarkable, isn't it?
I didn't know it was that high. I knew he did well, but I didn't know that well.
It's that high that it's always going to somehow end up going down. But we have seen it's been quite dramatic, the decline. I mean, what he did at Chelsea in that first spell was so impressive. Then came back and won the league with Chelsea again a few years later. Things didn't work out as well at Manchester United and Tottenham. Yes, he picked up silverware at Manchester United in the form of the League Cup and the Europa League as well, but he didn't really manage to close the gap to Man City. Yes, they finished second, but a long way behind Man City, and things fell apart in that 18-19 season. Went to Spurs. At one point, they were top of the Premier League, but things seemed to fall away yet again for Jose Mourinho. qualified for the final of the League Cup, so they could have ended their trophy drought, wasn't given the opportunity to lead Spurs into that final against Manchester City. But clubs will be wary. Maybe they're not quite getting the Jose Mourinho that had so much success with Porto and so much success with Chelsea at the beginning of his time in the Premier League.
Jose Mourinho currently no longer the head coach of Roma. Now, the other big story of the day has seen Sarina Wiegman sign a new contract extension as the England manager until 2027. Right, Ellen, was this a surprise in any way?
Well, it's a tricky one, because what better time to announce it than after she's picked up the FIFA Women's Best Coach of the Year for the fourth time, second time in a row. After the Euros, there's been so much talk about whether she'd renew her contract, whether she'd extend her contract. She has stayed in very true Sarina Wiegman style, very typically reserved. The FA, though, have been very clear that they want her to extend. Of course, they would. They took her to, obviously, the final of the World Cup over summer. She's the only manager to reach back-to-back Euros and World Cup finals for two different nations. Everything that she has achieved is incredible. Of course, you'd want her to stay. She's spoken about unfinished business, though. Is that the World Cup final? Is it the fact that they didn't lift the trophy in the end? Is that what she's speaking about? If you speak to Sarina, if you've met Sarina, she's so determined. She has this brilliant aura around her. She'll know that they've come so close. Without the captain, without the Golden Boot winner of the Euros, in obviously Leah Williamson and Beth Mead, she obviously had a lot of confidence in her team when they went to the World Cup final, but she said that she knows that they can achieve more, and that's, of course, what she'll want to go on and do.
I think, as Ellen just said there, when it came up saying 2027, I'm pretty sure every single fan was like, there's a reason for this. Yeah. We want to go all the way this time, and I believe that's probably why she signed that contract.
Well, this is what she had to say about it. I'm so happy to have the chance to lead England through to 2027 after an incredible 2.5 years. Looking forward, we have unfinished business, and I know we are capable of even more, although nothing will come easy. Our game is becoming so competitive at the top level. I relish that opportunity and can't wait to start the Euro qualifiers, followed by the World Cup. Right, Ellen, OK, this is the toughest question. What would success be between now and 2027, or is that the most obvious question that I can ask?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? She said there that she knows that they can go all the way. She knows that they can achieve a huge amount. You can see the stats there. Her England record, it is incredible. Played 45, won 34, only lost 4. She's built this really strong team.
In that, 166
it's incredible,
in
isn't
45.
It is incredible. The way that she's galvanised this team and the nation. Again, we speak about the unfinished business. I think success has to be equaling, if not bettering, what she has already done. So a Euros final, a World Cup final. I think that she'll see that as the bare minimum. But what she said is it is going to be a challenge. We spoke about it earlier. The nations in Europe, they're levelling up. I think England still have the advantage on the squad depth. You've got these young players coming through at under 23 level, the young Lionesses, and a number of them have senior caps. We talk about Katie Robinson and Jess Park. And so I think we have the advantage on squad depth. I think anything other than making a Euros final, making a World Cup final, that has to be what success looks like. It will be a challenge, though, of course. Spain will be in the Euros, the current World Cup champions. You've got a resurgent France, Germany and the Netherlands. But it's Sarina Wiegman. These are the challenges that she absolutely loves and she absolutely relishes. Well, England have the right manager for it. Now, a few transfer lines to update you on. Brentford are among the clubs interested in the Norwich winger Jonathan Rowe. They've also added Antonio Nusa and Max Bayer to their list of targets. And Luton, they're set to sign Tom Holmes from Reading after the player completed a medical. Loads still to come. We're live to Brazil next with reports emerging that Newcastle are looking at a new midfielder and Brighton are keen on another South American talent.
Welcome back to Transfer Talk. A line just into us, and Richard Masters from the Premier League has confirmed to the DCMS Select Committee a date has now been set for Manchester City's Premier League hearing for their alleged 115 breaches of financial rules. However, he did not specify when that date will be. He did confirm that the Premier League are looking at replacing PSR, profitability and sustainability rules, for a different model from next season. More on that from 1 p.m. here on Sky Sports News. But time to cross to Brazil now, and we can speak to South American football expert Tim Vickery. Great to see you, Tim. Let's start with Newcastle, and reports suggesting they're looking at a new midfielder. Who is it?
It's a Brazilian called Ederson, yet another son of Eder, who plays for Atalanta in Italy. 24 years old, strong, well-built central midfielder, strong on the ball, versatile, box-to-box, strong personality as well. The first time I remember him, his professional debut, really. He's thrown in the deep end in a big team called Cruzeiro, who are really on the slide. They were relegated in dreadful form. And even in this bad context, he stood out. So a lot of virtues. And I just wonder, Tom, if all these virtues I'm telling you about may remind you of a Brazilian already wearing the shirt of Newcastle.
Well, that's the thing that might worry the Newcastle fans. I think, OK, this sounds like a good player, but they'll be worrying, is it a replacement for Bruno Guimaraes if he was to leave?
Yeah, and you could see this either as kind of backup in a squad, which I think we've seen this season with the test of the Champions League. The squad lacks depth. Or you could also interpret it as maybe Newcastle under pressure with financial fair play, big money offers coming in for Bruno Guimaraes. You could see it as a replacement. So backup, replacement, you find people are far closer to the action than I am. So I'll leave that one in the cauldron of speculation.
Tim, Crystal Palace yet to sign anybody in January so far, but who are they looking at?
They've been linked with a Colombian right-back, Daniel Munoz, who plays for Genk in Belgium. And I just wonder here if we might have the potential for a new route. And Belgian football has quite strong connections, especially Colombia and Ecuador. Some Argentines go over there as well. Quite often players have gone to Portugal and then been sold on to the Premier League for a huge profit. I wonder if Premier League clubs will start looking at South Americans now based in Belgium.
What type of player is he? Is he ready for the Premier League? Palace, of course, already been in the South American market earlier on in the summer.
Yeah, and he's a very, very different type of player from Mateus França, who's an attacking midfielder and a real talent, but bought on promise. Daniel Munoz is 27, experienced player. He's Colombia's first choice right back. But what he is very much is an attacking right back. There's plenty of goals in him from that position, both with his right foot and also getting in there on the far post with his headers. He can go outside and cross. He's quite tall. He's more than 6 foot. And I think defensively, perhaps he can be caught a little bit off balance. So I think he would be ready for the Premier League as long as you realise that what you're buying here is an attacking right back.
Tim, Brighton yet again seem to be looking at the South American market. Who are they interested in now?
Well, there's a player that they've been linked with, although so is half of Europe, and maybe Benfica might be the likely one here. But Brighton certainly having a look at this player. Ezequiel Fernandez, shall we keep it simple? Eki Fernandez of Boca Juniors, 21 years old, central midfielder. Has had a good couple of years, and Boca loaned him out to a smaller club, to Tigre last year. Picked up experience, and he's done well on his return. There's real talent there, Eki Fernandez. There's a real bit of swagger about him, a kind of central midfielder capable of doing something a little bit different. You might be worried that he just lacks half a yard of pace, but a good left foot and an interesting one to look at. Apparently on Brighton's radar screen, but on Benfica's and plenty of other European clubs. Yeah,
another player that was spoken about. Is there any update on Valentin Barco and his move to Brighton?
Well, as I understand it, done deal, but Barco has not yet sailed. The hold-up here is that this weekend we kick off the South American Under-23 Championships, which qualifies 2 teams for the Paris Olympics. That's a big deal over here. And Barco is in the Argentine squad. I wonder here if he did some kind of deal with Brighton where he forced the move through. He forced it through at a buyout clause that was 10 million US. It was just about to go up to 14 million US. And I wonder if he falls through the deal here where I'll I'll go to Brighton. I'll keep the fee down. In exchange, you let me report in the middle of February after this under-23 competition. So Brighton fans are going to have to wait a few weeks before they see him.
Tim, you raved about John Duran moving to Aston Villa, but it seems like reports in the papers are suggesting Chelsea might be interested in him.
Well, there is a real player there, a strong, quick, mobile, left-footed striker. He's one of the big hopes of Colombian football. He's had a year now at Villa, and it seems he hasn't really won the trust of Unai Emery. So from a number of perspectives, you think, well, a loan deal to Chelsea perhaps short in that department. And Mauricio Pochettino, quite often the Colombians, they need that kind of warm-hearted coach, an arm around the shoulder. So you could see it working for Duran. You could see it working for Chelsea. But the big question here is, would Villa be disposed to help one of their rivals for a Champions League slot? I know there's 10 points between them at the moment, but Duran maybe could reduce that gap. So would Villa be so magnanimous as to release one of their bright young talents to a rival? If they do want to loan him out, I would imagine that it would make more sense for Villa to loan him out to a club in another European league.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, Tim, so I'm all for it. Thank you. See you next week.
My pleasure.
Let's get to those developments involving Kalvin Phillips. You can see a few club badges behind me. James, why is that? What's the latest?
Well, a number of clubs, Crystal Palace, Everton, Newcastle, West Ham and Juventus, are all interested in signing Kalvin Phillips from Man City in this window. Now, he's on the market. City would prefer to sell him. A loan option hasn't been ruled out, though. They want a loan fee, though, around £5 million, we understand that to be. And most, if not all, of his wages, £135,000 a week to be paid in full. So several of these clubs are believed to approach Man City to register their initial interest. There's not been any formal offers at this stage. So it remains to be seen what deal that City are prepared to accept and what deal that these clubs are prepared to put on the table for Man City. And this is after Guardiola spoke in December and admitted that Phillips could be allowed the opportunity to search for regular game time in the second part of the season. Only played 4 times in the Premier League this term. Only started 2 Premier League matches in total for Man City. They came in May when City had already won the title. So it doesn't seem like he's got a future at Man City for now, but it's whether or not he ends up in one of these locations over the next few days of this window.
Well, which one of those locations would suit him best, Nabeed?
I'll run you through all of them. Crystal Palace, we'll go right to left. I think they're looking for a replacement for Decore, who potentially is out for the rest of the season with an ACL injury. Does that really fit for Kalvin Phillips? Maybe minutes-wise, he'll certainly play almost every single game. As for West Ham, I know obviously people will suggest he could be the Declan Rice replacement, but I actually think they've got a really nice balance in midfield, and maybe Kalvin Phillips might upset that balance in a way. Then Newcastle, they need a 6. Everyone wants to see Bruno Guimaraes play as an 8. I'm sure Tim Vickery is also sat over in South America thinking the exact same thing. And then we come to Juve, and as I said earlier today, that's the one for me personally that I'd like to see him go abroad, get some minutes, and also he hasn't played enough football, like James just said there. He could do with going to a league that's a little bit slower, and typically midfielders that have left the Premier League and gone there have done very, very well. And then lastly, Everton, that midfield 3 of Onana, Decore and Kalvin Phillips. I mean, the way they've performed with the midfield that they've currently got at the moment, overcome their 10-point deduction, they're outside the relegation zone. I think Sean Dyche will be licking his lips. So out of those, I'd back Juve, but I honestly think you could fit any of them.
But Ellen, could you actually see him staying this month?
I could. If City's financial demands aren't met, then they're not going to let him go. As much as Pep has said how sorry he is that things haven't worked out at the club, they're not going to let him go unless that loan fee of £5 million is met. And as James said, most, if not all, of the £135,000 a week of wages. I think, obviously, he wants to be playing regular football. He's a footballer. That's what he wants to be doing. When you look at, will it affect his chances for the Euro squad in summer? I don't think so, personally. Gareth Southgate is a creature of habit. He regularly backs players, even if they're not, breaking through into starting 11s. He is still training in some of the best facilities in the world under arguably the best manager in the world, and you look at his teammates, how many of them made, you know, the World 11 FIFA Best Awards. You know, he is going toe-to-toe with them in every training session. So I think he would still, even if he doesn't get a loan or a move this window, I think he'll still make the Euro squad.
Well, we've got loads still to come on Transfer Talk this lunchtime, including the latest on Mary Earps' future at Manchester United. Got some breaking news that we've been expecting, and Roma have now reached an agreement with Daniele De Rossi to become their new manager. That's according to Sky in Italy. Remember, Jose Mourinho, big news this morning. He was sacked by Roma. They've already found their replacement. It's club legend Daniele De Rossi. Now, time to talk about the WSL. And a few things are happening this month. And, Ellen, movement really picked up at the end of last week.
Yeah, a slightly hesitant start to the window. We've seen it in the Premier League. We saw it in the WSL as well. We saw some incredible Sherlock Holmes level detective skills from some of the Arsenal fans who managed to pick out Emily Fox, their new signing, in the background of one of the pictures from the warm weather camp, and then Arsenal took a couple of days. They didn't announce it straight away. They let it sort of boil and bubble over on social media, and then announced the signing of the US international. Everton, just before the weekend and on Saturday morning, announced the signing of Danish duo Catherine Kuhl and Wiegman Kuhl on loan from Arsenal. So things are starting to get moving a little bit.
We've got to talk about Sam Kerr's injury. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's such a tough one. Sam Kerr, she has been one of the star players in the WSL. I love watching her play. Everyone loves watching her play. She sustained an ACL injury on a warm weather training camp with Chelsea. That's the end of her season at this stage. Her last game will have now been played under Emma Hayes. She's been such a huge player under the Chelsea manager, a focal point of this Chelsea team. You can see some of the stats there. 117 games, 95 goals, 29 assists. It's insane.
It's almost a goal a game.
The influence that she's had on this team. Four back-to-back WSL titles, 3 consecutive FA Cups, 2 League Cups. She has been such a star, and it's so disappointing to see her career under Emma Hayes end in this way.
But do they need to replace her? That's the thing.
See, that's the question. Chelsea did bolster in this position in summer. Anton mentioned earlier, they also have this youth product coming through that loads of people are very, very excited about. Aggie Beaver-Jones, playing as a winger, can play as a striker. She was on loan at Everton last season, but has broken into the squad and is someone that Chelsea fans are really excited about. She's one of their own. So I don't think that Chelsea will need to replace her or cover her in that position. So with that in mind, Emma Hayes could have made her last signing as Chelsea manager. They signed Natalie Bjorn, the Swedish centre-back from Everton, last week. So, it feels like a bit of an end of an era, if we say that.
Well, we're going to talk about Manchester United goalkeeper in a moment, but Manchester City goalkeeper Ellie Roebuck, speculation about her?
Yeah, she hasn't made an appearance this season for Manchester City. We can take a look at the stats from last season, though. Conceded almost a goal a game. Save rate 61%, but she did really fit the style of play that City were playing at the time. Sort of likened a bit to Edison when she has the ball at her feet. City like to play out from the back. Most of the time she stayed cool, calm and collected, but hasn't played for City since a red card against Manchester United in the penultimate game of the season. She missed out in the last England squad because she hasn't been playing regularly. She said that making that national team is a priority for her, but she needs to be playing to do that. She's been linked to a move with Barcelona. We've reported that she's been in talks with them. No clarity really on whether that move might happen this window or in the summer, but she would be linking back up with England teammates Kira Walsh and Lucy Bronze, who are now at Barcelona. Obviously, former City teammates as well, but she needs a move if she's going to break back into the international team. We've seen it with Mary Earps. We spoke about it earlier, and I'm sure we'll speak about it in a second as well. Serena Wiegman turned around Mary Earps' international career. Ellie Roebuck is still a very young player, but she needs a good move.
Well, there is a lot revolving around two-time FIFA best player, best goalkeeper award. Sorry, Mary Earps, you've kind of teed that up nicely for her. Could we see her move abroad?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting one, and again, one that the women's football fans detectives took to just before the window. She signed with a new agent. This is an agent who also represents Ada Hegerberg, Bunny Shaw, Caitlin Ford, Khadijah Buchanan, and agents who have a lot of influence overseas, particularly in Europe. We could see a move abroad. PSG have shown interest. Remember, Arsenal put in world record bids for Alessia Russo and Mary Earps in her position before then signing Russo on a free at the end of her time at Manchester United. Jonas Ivedal has said that he wants a keeper. She won her only domestic silverware in Wolfsburg in the women's Bundesliga. She could look to go abroad to chase more of those titles, more of those silverwares. I think a move abroad could be quite likely.
But, I mean, under Serena Wiegman, you mentioned it earlier, she has really thrived. Yeah,
Serena has brought her out of the international wilderness. She's spoken really openly about how she didn't know if she'd play for England again. Her international career was really up in the air. You can see some of her stats, great stats, save rate of 76%. That's this season as well, played 10, 11 goals conceded. It has bled down, obviously, you know, the support that she's been having and the success that she's had at international level, bled down to club level last season. United have said they want to keep her. Of course they would. Her role is so much more than just keeping the ball out of the back of the net. She is such a vocal leader. The game against China, when we were out in Australia for the World Cup, you could hear her bellowing at the back line, and that is something that United and her teammates have really valued. She's a player that the young United squad players will really look up to. Of course, if she goes, they would need to find a replacement, but they've got one waiting in the wings. Fallon Joyce has really impressed in the Continental Cup this season. She's probably the strongest second keeper that I've seen at Manchester United for a while. They would have and then need to find a backup for her, so United could be in search of a goalkeeper as well.
OK, well, Earps' future is uncertain, OK, as we were saying. But let's hear what she had to say last night at the FIFA Best Award.
One thing I didn't mention when I was up there, which naughty me, was that I'm surrounded by such incredible people, and I would not be here without their support and guidance. And yeah, they mean the world to me, and I'm so grateful for them, and this is dedicated to them. I'm someone who wants to stand up for what's right. I think, one of my key values is sort of fairness, and when there is a lot of injustice in the world, there's a lot of struggles and battles that people face, and maybe we can conquer them one battle at a time.
She's an England international. We've talked about Kalvin Phillips. Another England international could be on the move. That is Jordan Henderson. He wants to leave Al Ettifaq, and Ajax are trying to buy the midfielder. James, how surprised are you that so far no Premier League clubs have come in?
Well, perhaps when we look at what's happened in January so far and the lack of activity when it comes to Premier League clubs, there is no real surprise, because we understand Al Ettifaq will not allow Henderson to go cheaply. They paid around £13 million for him, reported his wages around £350,000 a week. So they're not prepared to let him go on loan because, as Ellen was discussing earlier, they don't want to pay so much to bring him in and then actually pay his wages for him to play for another side. So clubs, as we've seen what happened to Everton, that really has set a precedent when it comes to the 10-point deduction they were given for breaking PSR rules. So clubs are more concerned than ever about staying the right side of the line. Need to bear in mind 18 of the 20 Premier League clubs lost money in the last financial year. And one way to try and offset that is player sales. But unfortunately, in this window so far, even the Saudi Pro League aren't willing to spend a lot of money on players. So nobody's got money to buy their players, which means they've not got money to buy other players. So that's why in a situation where somebody like Jordan Henderson, despite the fact he could obviously improve all of these clubs, and there are clubs that, of course, would love to sign him because he could make such a difference, they can't afford to buy him in this window, A, because of their financial situation, and B, because their financial situation when it comes to fitting within the rules, when it comes to profit and sustainability.
Nabeed, for the Saudi Pro League, how much of a blow is it, the fact that he actually wants to leave in the first place?
I don't think it's much of a blow at all, to be honest. The Saudi Pro League are a very new league. It's in its infancy, so naturally they will continue to sign players, and when certain players don't work out, there will be an element of collateral damage. But ultimately, there's a lot of players there that are happy. There's a lot of players there that are having a good time. And Henderson just hasn't settled in this case. So I don't think it's a case of the Saudi Pro League now as a huge blow or a huge red mark against it because Jordan Henderson wants to leave. Ultimately, this is one player out of a group of players that they've signed. And the league is too new to judge it on the basis of one or two signings, saying, I'm not that keen anymore.
What do you think, James?
I agree with Nabeed. I think with respect to Jordan Henderson, he's not perhaps the marquee player that when the Saudi Pro League went into the summer and thought, what players do we want to try and sign? He wasn't a Karim Benzema, he wasn't a Neymar, not a Cristiano Ronaldo who signed before that. But significantly, he was the only English player to move to the Saudi Pro League. And he was a marquee player in that way. The fact that they could prize away a current England international, a former Liverpool captain, to the Saudi Pro League was a significant coup. But I think it reflects more on the fact that Steven Gerrard wanted Jordan Henderson rather than the Saudi Pro League themselves. So I think it reflects more on Jordan Henderson, the decision he made in the summer, than what the Saudi Pro League have done. Yes, there are players we understand have been unsettled there, but there's a number of players who are loving life in the Saudi Pro League at the moment, and they're very happy with the situation. Their plan is for long, sustainable growth, so they do end up becoming one of the world's top leagues. And whether you like it or not, they're satisfied with what they've achieved at the moment, and they feel they're on the right path and things are trending in the right direction. And Al Ettifaq haven't had a very decent season, 8th in the Saudi Pro League at the moment. But we look at the way the division's going, whether you do like it or not, where the money seems to be going, where the players seem to be going, they're in a really good place. And Jordan Henderson leaving isn't going to derail their ambitions and the trajectory they seem to be going on.
I see this as sort of like when a club has a takeover from a very wealthy owner, and they sign loads of players. Think Chelsea with Todd Bowley at the moment. Some of them work, some of them don't, and it's just a transitional period. That's the entire Saudi Pro League on the whole. It's a brand new league. There's going to be players coming in, certain players going out. I think it's just the fact that it's Jordan Henderson. Everything else that has happened when he was here in the Premier League and having won the Premier League and everything like that has built this sort of idea that maybe him leaving could be a big issue for the Saudi Pro League. But I think Henderson goes, someone new will come in.
Right, now it's been confirmed. Roma have now given Daniele De Rossi the job of head coach. It's until the end of the season, OK? That's new to us. His first game is the club's upcoming Serie A match, which is against Verona. It's on Saturday evening at the Stadio Olimpico. So Daniele De Rossi has now replaced Jose Mourinho as the new head coach of Roma. On the way, what next for Nottingham Forest after being charged for breaching PSR? We'll hear from Nuno Espirito Santo. Nuno Espirito Santo faced the media this morning, the day after discovering Nottingham Forest could face sanctions for alleged breaches of the Premier League profit and sustainability rules. Could this change their plans for the January transfer window? Here's what Nuno had to say.
We are all concerned in the club, but me as a coach is nothing that I have to think or to deal with that. My job is clear, is to to prepare the team. We have a match tomorrow, and this is what we are focused on.
Does it change at all your plans for this January transfer window?
No, not at all. It doesn't change anything. We have to continue our work. The balance of the squad is important. We have to organize the squad, as I tell you before. The idea is to improve. It's not easy, especially in this window, but we are working on that, trying to find the best way in the squad to deal to the rest of the season.
With that in mind, are you close to seeing any players depart or bringing anybody in?
We are working every day on that.
Right, OK, interesting there to hear from Nuno Espirito Santo. Ellen, just remind everyone why they're in this position.
Yeah, I think this was one of the big questions yesterday when you looked at the profit and sustainability rules, and that is over usually a 3-year period. And when it comes to Nottingham Forest, because they're so recently promoted from the Championship, that is where a lot of questions started to be asked. So basically, clubs are permitted to lose 105 million over a 3-year period. So that equates to 35 million a season. But because Forest spent 2 seasons of the most recent cycle within the Championship, their losses are capped at 61 million, equating to 30 million in each of 2020 to 2021 and 2021 to 2022, and then 35 million last season. So that's the numbers for Nottingham Forest because they're so recently promoted from the Championship. Obviously, they went on this, I think the best word for it is transfer window assault. They went into the market and they thought, we're going to give it everything when we go up. 30 players in their first 2 windows for 150 million. I don't think there's any better way of putting it than assault. The way they went in with so much aggression. I remember covering their first trip to the Etihad and we were praising how much ambition the owners had. Obviously now it's coming back to bite them a little bit because their losses are capped off at that 61 million.
Is PSR the reason why we're seeing a more quiet window so far in the Premier League in general?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think a lot of clubs are in a situation where they'd like to do business, they'd like to be active, they'd like to get themselves and elevate themselves from the situation they're in at the moment. The clubs like Nottingham Forest, that's why they have been so active in recent windows, because the thought of relegation is just almost too much to bear. But the only way a lot of these clubs are going to be able to do business is by selling their players in this window to either generate funds or to put them in a better situation when it comes to PSR. But unfortunately, the Saudi Pro League aren't interested in doing a huge amount of business at the moment. Clubs in Europe aren't interested in doing massive deals either. They're also looking at the loan market and maybe a loan with an option or obligation to buy in the summer and in a slightly better situation. So, unfortunately, clubs are in a situation where they're trying to get their offload their players to bring them in, but the market isn't great at the moment. I think we will see a lot of activity over the last few days. That always seems to happen in transfer windows when clubs panic and they need to do something. But we have seen with the rules of PSR, with Everton being charged, being given that 10-point deduction, with Nottingham Forest charged yesterday as well, that clubs really know that these rules do have teeth. And if they go the wrong side of the line, then they could find themselves punished and suffer a points deduction, which could then lead to something like relegation.
The good news is teams still need to sign players. Teams are still fighting relegation or they're trying to get into Champions League places. So there will be transfers. Stay locked in. Don't go anywhere.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's get to Wolves because Gary O'Neill will be hoping to add to his squad this month. He's already seen Sasa Kalajic and Fabio Silva leave the club on loan this month.
I would say we're getting closer every day, really, until something goes wrong and then you get further away. So there's discussions going on. Obviously, that was the idea behind letting the guys go out as early as we could. It helps financially, helps free up some wages that we can use in the loan market or for people that may be available. So club are working very hard on it. I'm confident that we'll be able to bring players in before the window closes, but that doesn't mean we can guarantee it because things do obviously move and change. And but I know the guys upstairs are working extremely hard on it.
So why do they need a striker, James? I think it's fairly obvious there, as Gary O'Neill explained.
Yeah, well, they've let 2 strikers go on loan in this window, so they're interested in Danny Ings, Che Adams and Hugo Ekitike, and that's about all they can probably do at the moment because of what we spoke about with the PSR situation. It's not going to be like what happened last January where they were struggling at the bottom of the Premier League table. Julian Lopetegui wanted players in. They spent £73 million. It won't be anything like that in this window. It's most likely that any expensive signs they make would be loans with an option to buy in the summer or a loan with an obligation to buy. But centre forward is a real pressing concern for them. Cunha has been so impressive. So has Wang Hee-chan so far this season. That's really elevated them to where they are on the table, where they feel like in a fairly comfortable situation. It felt like at the beginning of the season, Gary Neal came in so late that it could be a really, really challenging campaign. It's a mark of what he's done. It's a mark of what the squad have done. But Cunha and Wang, they're not out-and-out strikers, so they'd love to have an out-and-out number 9. I don't think Gary Neal saw Kalajdzic as who would be the main man for him moving forward. That's why he's moved out on loan. I don't think that he'll have a long-term future at the club. So that is the overriding priority for Wolves. Since Raul Jimenez was at his pomp 3 years ago, they've really struggled to find the right man to play in that position. I'm not sure January is the right window to necessarily find the long-term answer for them, but somebody like Ings or Adams in particular could be someone that ties them over until the summer where they can really address the situation properly.
What about Ekitike, though?
He hasn't played a lot. Had a standout season at Stade Reims. Engages defenders, might suit the Premier League, physical fella. But they do have Hwang, they do have Neto, and they do have options.
Yeah, they certainly do. Lots still to come this month on Transfer Talk, of course, including tomorrow, because we're back with Good Morning Transfers, same time, 9 o'clock until 10 o'clock. And this show, Transfer Talk, is back from midday until 1 o'clock. There's plenty more today because the transfer show, there's 2 helpings as usual at 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. Loads of big news today. Serena Wiegman has signed a new contract to be the England manager until 2027, and Jose Mourinho has been sacked by Roma. Not only that, Roma have already announced his replacement as Daniele De Rossi comes in. Right, the transfer centre is next. I'll keep you up to date with everything that's happening. I'll be having more reaction to Jose Mourinho and also hearing from Sean Dyche later today.